In the vast, shadowed library of the sprawling Warburton estate, Keith sat alone amid towering shelves of leather-bound volumes and relics of bygone glories. His mind replayed his mother's admonishing words, cold and unyielding, that had sealed his fate. "She is barren, Keith. Our family's future depends on this truth," her voice echoed, as if each syllable weighed as much as the ornate grandfather clock's tick. The opulence around him felt less like comfort and more like a gilded cage, where every echo of the past reminded him of the love sacrificed at the altar of duty. Staring at a tumbler of untouched bourbon on a mahogany desk, Keith wrestled with inner turmoil that no amount of vintage spirits could soothe. The cold corridors of his ancestral home seemed to whisper reminders of lost passion and irretrievable moments. His mother's ironclad expectations pressed down like the heavy drapes in the library, and each tick of the ancient clock mocked him for his weakness. Amid the somber silence, a bitter irony surfaced. If only his bourbon could offer solace or a humorous reprieve from the relentless pressure of a legacy that demanded the sacrifice of personal happiness for a family name. Far from the suffocating grandeur of the Warburton estate, Michelle began her day in a modest sitting room, where the soft morning light danced on faded wallpaper. As she folded laundry by a sunlit bay window, her thoughts wandered back to simpler times when a smile from Keith could light up even the dullest of afternoons. Now, that smile had vanished, replaced by quiet sorrow and the burden of unmet expectations. With each careful crease of fabric, she clung to a fragile routine, a silent act of rebellion against the oppressive memories of a past where love had been measured solely by the promise of children. One quiet afternoon, the door creaked open with a hesitant groan, and Michelle's heart skipped a beat as Keith stepped into her humble sanctuary. His presence was both familiar and painfully estranged, carrying the weight of guilt and regret in every measured step. He lingered in the doorway, as if unsure whether to cross the threshold of their fractured past, while Michelle's eyes, a blend of relief and apprehension, silently pleaded for answers. In a voice barely above a whisper, he broached the topic that had long festered between them, the need for separation, a truth that shattered the remnants of the life they once shared. In the charged stillness that followed, Michelle's voice trembled with a mix of hurt and determination as she demanded an explanation for the decision that had unraveled their bond. With his gaze dropping to the worn carpet, Keith confessed, voice edged with finality, that duty and the relentless pressure of family expectations had forced his hand. His words, as cold and calculated as the ticking clock in the library, revealed that her worth had been judged solely on her ability to bear children. The cruel confession struck her like a jolt of bitter irony, one that made their shared history seem like a tragic soap opera scripted by fate. After that fateful conversation, Michelle found herself alone in the echoing emptiness of their former home. The silence was oppressive, a tapestry woven from threads of grief, anger, and quiet resignation. Each corner of the room held memories of laughter now replaced by sorrow, and every familiar creak of the floorboards whispered tales of lost dreams. Sinking into a time-worn chair, she allowed the weight of betrayal to press down on her. Yet beneath the heartache, a small ember of resolve began to glow. It was the quiet promise that she would find a way to leave behind the suffocating legacy that had measured her worth in impossible terms. Determined to reclaim the fragments of a life that once held promise, Michelle packed a small, battered suitcase on a rain-soaked morning. The downpour outside mirrored the storm raging within her, each raindrop a punctuation to her silent vow for freedom. As she stepped away from the mansion that had imprisoned her with expectations and shattered dreams, a wry thought crossed her mind. If life had a GPS, it would surely announce, recalculating route to happiness. Boarding a creaky train bound for Chicago, the rhythmic clatter of wheels offered a strange, comforting cadence to her hopeful escape from the ghost of a love that once was. Arriving in Chicago, Michelle embraced the stark contrast between her modest new apartment and the opulence she'd left behind. The small space, with its peeling paint and well-worn floors, promised a fresh start unburdened by the weight of legacy. She soon found employment at a local cafe, where the hum of espresso machines and the chatter of morning regulars replaced the cold silence of her past. Amid the clatter of cups and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, Michelle's resilient smile began to re-emerge. Each day, with every careful pour and friendly greeting, she stitched together a new life defined by hope, strength, and a quietly determined heart. In the midst of her budding routine, An unexpected twist of fate stirred hope within Michelle's cautiously rebuilding world. One seemingly ordinary morning, waves of dizziness forced her to visit a local doctor, a decision that would pivot her life onto an entirely new trajectory. In the sterile quiet of the examination room, the doctor delivered news that was as shocking as it was miraculous. She was pregnant with twins. The revelation struck her like a bolt of lightning, both a blessing and a burden. In that surreal moment, the irony of life's twists became apparent. The very fate that had once branded her as unworthy now promised a future rich with unexpected joy. The day of delivery arrived with an intensity that mingled pain and profound beauty in the sterile brightness of a hospital room. Amid the relentless rush of contractions, Michelle endured every surge of agony with a fierce determination that bordered on defiance. With one final, desperate push, the room burst into life as the cries of two newborns filled the air, a sound that was both heart-wrenching and life-affirming. Exhausted and elated, Michelle cradled her twin sons, their tiny features evoking memories of a love that had once been lost. In that tender, bittersweet moment, she made a silent vow to forge a future where love reigned supreme over legacy. Back within the opulent halls of duty and expectation, Keith sought to fill the void left by Michelle's departure by entering into a new marriage. In a ceremony as grand as the ancestral estate itself, he wed Victoria, a woman whose refined elegance was as carefully chosen as the strategic advantages her union promised. The reception sparkled with dazzling lights and polite applause, yet beneath the glittering veneer, Keith's heart remained numb and heavy. Surrounded by the trappings of wealth, he found himself a prisoner to tradition, a man whose soul was haunted by the memory of a love sacrificed on the altar of family legacy, a sacrifice that left him forever bereft. At the lavish reception, Keith wandered through glittering hallways clutching a glass of champagne, as if the fizzy drink might somehow mask the hollowness inside him. The laughter of the elite, though polite and carefully orchestrated, seemed distant, a mere background score to his internal lament. Victoria, poised and radiant, floated through the crowd, yet her eyes betrayed a weariness that belied the sparkling facade. Even as his formidable mother, Kimberly, looked on with an air of quiet satisfaction. Keith felt increasingly trapped in a role dictated by duty and expectation. Every polished smile and clink of glass only deepened the irony of his lonely existence. Within the cold, imposing walls of the Warburton estate, tension simmered beneath the veneer of family tradition. Kimberly, relentless and exacting, ruled over the household with a steely resolve to preserve the legacy at any cost. She openly scorned the memory of Michelle, a painful symbol of a failed union and a lost opportunity for a true heir. Meanwhile, Victoria, elegant yet silently constrained, moved through her days like a caged bird, her every step a reminder of the gilded trap she could not escape. In this carefully choreographed drama of duty versus desire, every whispered secret and furtive glance underscored the bitter price of a legacy built on sacrifice and relentless expectation. In the quiet hours of solitude, Keith would retreat to a private corner of his opulent study, clutching a faded photograph of a time when love had been simpler. He traced the delicate lines of the smile captured in the image, a smile that once brought warmth to his cold world. Each glance at the photograph stirred deep regret, a poignant reminder of a life that might have been filled with laughter and tender moments. The relentless pull of the family legacy had chained him to a role devoid of true happiness, leaving him to navigate the echoing corridors of his heart, where memories of lost love haunted him like a bittersweet ghost. Several years later, fate led Keith on an unexpected journey to Chicago, a city far removed from the grand corridors of his past. Wandering through a sunlit park, his eyes fell upon a scene that jolted him from his reverie. There, amid the laughter of children and the gentle rustle of leaves, he saw Michelle, radiant in the simple joy of motherhood as she played with two small boys. The sight struck him with a force greater than any scandal or family decree. It was a reminder of all that he had sacrificed. In that moment, his heart pounded with a tumult of longing, regret, and an aching curiosity for the life he had lost. Unable to resist the gravity of the past, Keith hesitated before approaching Michelle in the park, where time itself seemed to pause. Their eyes met in a charged silence, a silent exchange laden with years of unspoken pain and regret. Michelle's expression shifted from guarded surprise to sorrowful resolve as she confronted the man who had once promised her the world. In soft, trembling tones, she recounted the years of abandonment and the harsh reality that had forced her to rebuild her life from scratch. Keith, voice thick with remorse, admitted his own failings, each word a bitter confession of a love irrevocably marred by duty. As their conversation lingered under the dappled shade of ancient trees, Michelle made it clear that her life had irrevocably transformed. She explained how, in the face of heartache, she had found strength in unexpected places, most notably in Andrew, a kind and steadfast companion who had supported her through the darkest days. Though Keith pleaded for a chance to mend the past, his words fell on ears hardened by years of pain and betrayal. The gentle resolve in Michelle's voice left no room for compromise, her quiet determination echoing through the park as a testament to the power of rebuilding a life defined by love and resilience rather than by a crumbling legacy. Back at the imposing Warburton mansion in New York, a different kind of turmoil was unfolding behind its gilded doors. In a dramatic clash that seemed ripped from the pages of a high-stakes drama, Victoria and Kimberly sparred over the future of the family legacy. Kimberly's relentless pursuit of the perfect heir and her disdain for anyone who fell short of her vision created an atmosphere thick with tension and simmering resentment. Rumors of Keith's secret regrets and whispered tales of a lost chance at true happiness spread like wildfire through the stately halls. Amid the polished opulence, the facade of wealth began to crack under the strain of personal betrayal. In an unexpected act of defiance against the oppressive family tradition, Victoria finally reached her breaking point. One cool morning, with a heavy heart and a resolve that surprised even herself, she gathered her daughter Haley's belongings and left the mansion behind. The sound of the car engine and the distant echo of her departure reverberated through the cold corridors of the Warburton estate, leaving Keith to confront the consequences of his choices. As he stood amidst the lingering opulence, the realization dawned upon him. The cost of ambition and duty was the love and trust of those who had once meant everything to him. Meanwhile, in Chicago, a new chapter began to unfold for Michelle. One crisp evening, seated on a weathered picnic blanket in a lively park, she watched with quiet joy as Andrew and her twin boys played under a canopy of starlight. The sound of their laughter mingled with the soft rustle of leaves, creating a gentle symphony of hope and renewal. In that serene moment, the heavy burdens of the past seemed to lift, replaced by a steady rhythm of love and resilience. Far away, Keith clutched an old photograph of Michelle and the boys, a painful reminder of what he had lost, as the possibility of redemption flickered faintly in his heart. As days turned into months, Keith retreated further into the isolating comforts of his legacy, a gilded prison from which he could not escape. In the quiet solitude of his expansive estate, he found himself haunted by memories of what might have been. Each lonely evening was punctuated by the bittersweet echo of Michelle's laughter and the innocent chatter of children he had never known. Even the opulence that once defined his world now felt hollow, a cruel reminder that true happiness could never be purchased. Amid the silence, he began to question whether a chance for redemption, however remote, might one day appear. In the end, the story of shattered legacies and lost love left a lingering note of bittersweet hope. While the scars of past choices remained etched deep within their hearts, the possibility of renewal shimmered on the horizon like the first light of dawn. Michelle, with her newfound strength and unwavering resolve, continued to build a life defined by genuine love and compassion. Keith, burdened by regret yet touched by the remnants of what once was, faced a future where every decision carried the weight of both sorrow and possibility. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, the quiet promise of redemption hinted that even the deepest wounds might one day heal.